Center for Indirect Taxation and Information Technology and hands-on experience as a consultant in Ernst& Young in the field of GST. He started off with his own practice and a startup venture in the name of GST Samadhan.in, which is providing technical and trading solutions to corporate. Sir is in regular faculty on GST for Chartered Accountants and Cost Accountants Institute for members and students. Also to mention, his views on GST are covered in NewsX channel and Ask Sir. Sir is also a special invitee and a GST advisor to various trade associations like BJP Traders Cell Delhi Pradesh, Authorized Electrical Stock Association, Netaji Subhash Pillai Traders Welfare Association, the Ragan Traders Welfare Association, to mention few. It's a privilege and honor to have you here, sir. I request you to kindly continue with your session, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anshika, for such a wonderful introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Ramanujan College, SP Agarwal ji, and Dr. C.S. Sanjeev Singhal ji for giving me this opportunity. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Purushottam Arya ji, Dr. Anjali Gupta, and Charu Sareen ji. Uh, so, let us today start today's session on the topic of reverse charge and advance ruling. Before I start the session, it becomes very important that we we should have a positive thought, and as told by Anjali ma'am few days back, that this session is being attended by various professionals, professors of universities from all over India, students and chartered accountants and other professionals. Uh, More than 70 participants have already joined, and I think it is streaming live on YouTube, so many more are watching right now.
So we'll be having more people,
Yeah,
come
yeah,
participants coming up
yeah,
in next
yeah,
5 minutes. But
yeah, yeah,
still,
yeah,
हम अपना session late नहीं करना चाहते. That
yeah,
is
yeah,
why
yeah.
we started.
No issue. So basically, at this moment, uh, if you have any finance background, you must be knowing that 31st of October is deadline for ITR, for tax audits, for GST audit, for GST returns. So it is a very, I would say a very and and at the last corona, so it is a kind of a very pressure moment for all chartered accountants and other professionals right now. So let us start today's session with a positive thought ki uh, don't downgrade your dream to match your reality. Upgrade your faith to match your destiny. You have to remain positive and uh, keep moving on to chase your dreams. So I'll not take much more time now, and let us start today's session. I think my screen is visible now.
Yes, sir, very much.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to give a brief how the session will start and end, we can have questions. I will be keep on telling about the various provisions and rules notification side by side. It will be a two-way interaction with you all. uh, you can ask any question in between. You can raise your hand or write your question, your query in the chat box. I'll try to cover all the questions in between the session too, so that the connect uh, doesn't get lagged off at the end. And even at the end, if कोई query रह जाएगी तो I can take up that query. So yeah. So, reverse charge and advance ruling is the topic. I have tried to cover all the advance rulings related to reverse charge in the presentation itself, because both these topics are very huge, and around 4 hours is needed to cover both the topics. But due to limited time, I have that's why combined both the topic, right? So this is what we will be studying today, right? So what is reverse charge, how it is different from normal, what you have to do to comply with the reverse charge provisions, right? On what services and goods reverse charge is applicable. So जो भी reverse charge से related चीज हम GST में जानते हैं, I'll try to cover all the reverse charge provisions today, right? uh, हम क्वेश्चन आंसर साइड बाय साइड लेते चलेंगे. सो आई एम नॉट इन एनी हरी. हम बहुत धीरे धीरे सेशन को चलाएंगे, ताकि जो भी प्रोविजंस, जो भी डाउट है, जो भी एनालिसिस है, वो हम अच्छे से कर पाए, राइट? Now, what is reverse charge mechanism? Section 2, subsection 98 of the GST Act has defined the word reverse charge, right? So, if you know, I think GST का भी मेरे ख्याल से this is the third or fourth session. So हमें अभी तक ये पता चल गया है कि जो नॉर्मल मैकेनिज्म होता है GST में, वो ये होता है कि आप जो सप्लायर है, जो सप्लाई कर रहा है गुड्स या सर्विसेज की, वो सरकार को यानी गवर्नमेंट को टैक्स जमा करता है. वो अपने इनवॉइस पे GST चार्ज करता है, एंड वो GST वो रिसिपेंट से कलेक्ट करके गवर्नमेंट को जमा करता है. सो दैट इज द नॉर्मल मैकेनिज्म, राइट? रिवर्स चार्ज क्या है? रिवर्स चार्ज इज टोटली ऑपोजिट. ट्रांजैक्शन वही रहती है. सप्लायर जो होता है वो अपना इनवॉइस रेज करता है, राइट? बट जो रिसिपेंट होता है वो GST सरकार को जमा करता है, सप्लायर जमा नहीं करता, राइट? सो देर इज अ complete shift from supplier to recipient, right?
A small request.
Yeah.
We have participants from South India as well. So,
Okay.
if possible, so mode of communication in English, because
Okay. Okay.
participants
Okay.
are.
No issues. No issues.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Right. So I hope this mechanism is clear. So in normal payment process, the GST is charged by supplier and is deposited by the supplier to the government. In reverse charge mechanism, everything remains same. It is just the tax is deposited by recipient and not by supplier, right? So this is the reverse charge mechanism. No, right. So there are basically two sections, I would say three sections, right? So there are three acts: CGST Act, IGST Act, and State GST Act, right? So these three sections, 9 subsection 3, 9 subsection 4, 9 subsection 5, these three sections are present in both the three acts, right? So we will be discussing all these three sections in detail, right? So now comes the registration part, right? Before we proceed to the registration part, we have to understand the definition of the word supply, right? Now this definition is very important, right? You have to understand the word supply in order to understand whole GST, because the fundamentals of GST Act is word supply. Because if anything is not a supply, then there is no GST, no reverse charge, no tax, nothing, right? So section 7 is very important, right? I i have discussed only i will discuss only A and B part, because that relates to my topic. I think uh, Bimal Jain sir will cover supply and deemed supply. So supply in his deliberation, so that will be more clear and will be discussed more detailed in his session. So what is supply? Supply includes all form of supply of goods, service, sale, transfer, barter, exchange, disposal made or agreed to be made for consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. So, what is important is in the course or furtherance of business, right? So, a transaction to be considered as a supply, GST will be charged if it is in the course or furtherance of business. Now comes the second point. This is important. We will be discussing this second point, B point, import of services in detail, right? Import of services for a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business, right? For import of service, import of services is included in the definition of supply, right? This B point is very important because it is related to reverse charge. I'll connect to you this point in later of my presentation. You just remember this point, right? If suppose I am a consumer, not a business person. I am a normal user, and I am importing any kind of services. That is, I am taking any kind of services from overseas for a consideration, right? I have no business, but supply point B states that if you are importing any services for consideration, even not in the course of furtherance of business, I have no business, then also it is a supply. So it is a supply, GST will come into picture, right? Just remember this thing as of now. We'll discuss the detailed part later, right? Now, today, everything related to reverse charge, everything related to RCM, whether it is definition, whether it is registration, whether how to file a reverse charge return, how to show that reverse charge amount in which column, how to file your GSTR 3B, GSTR 1 using how to put that correct value correct in the correct box, the provisions, everything, how to claim ITC, all the legal provisions, everything related to reverse charge we will discuss right now. So we all know that there is a threshold of 20 lakhs. Now it has been increased to 40 lakhs. But in case of service, it is still 20 lakhs, right? So we all know that if I am a new business, I am a new businessman or I'm a new dealer, I have started my business. So I have a threshold of 40 lakhs. Suppose I'm dealing in goods. So till 40 lakhs, I don't have to take any registration, right? But whether whether I have to take GST registration in case I have to pay tax under RCM. So this is the question. I am a new dealer. I am taking any kind of services which is covered under reverse charge. I have not exhausted my 40 lakhs limit. So the question is whether I have to take registration to comply with the RCM Yes or no. Uh, we can have a two-way interaction. You can say yes or no in the chat box. So I'll come to know whether I'm able to say the provisions to you or not, and uh, how well you are aware of GST. So I come to know whether I have to be more technical, or I have to be more explanatory to your to this provisions. So you can just say yes or no in the chat box, so that okay. Let us move on. Uh, right. So there is no threshold for tax to be paid under reverse charge. So if in my example I am a business dealer, I have started my new business, and suppose I am taking any services of a GTA, and that GTA, good transport agencies, transportation service, and that is covered under reverse charge. Then I have to take compulsory registration under GST, and I have to deposit GST under reverse charge, right? So there is no threshold, right? Now there are three sections: section 22, section 23, and section 24 of the GST Act, right? So let us. I have already shared you the brief of this registration part. Now let us discuss in detail how this interpretation has been derived. Also, there are few advanced ruling on this registration part. So we'll conclude this registration under reverse charge, and then we will move forward. So section 22 subsection 1 states that every supplier shall be liable to be registered under this act from where he makes a taxable supply if the aggregate turnover in the financial year exceeds 20 lakhs. That I've already discussed. Now, as per section 23, the following persons shall not be liable for registration if that person is exclusively dealing in exempted goods, right? Section 23 says if you are totally dealing in exempt goods, your turnover is suppose 2 crores, 10 crores, but your goods or your services is totally exempt from GST, then you don't have to take any GST registration as per section 23. Now comes section 24 that deals with compulsory registration, which says that notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1 of section 22, the following categories of persons shall be required to take GST registration. Now, the third point of that section says persons who are required to pay tax under reverse charge. Right. So if you are paying any tax under reverse charge, then you have to take compulsory registration, right? Section 24, the proviso has been stated that is overruling the section 22 subsection 1, right? So section 24 is overruling section 22 and is saying that you have to take compulsory registration in order to comply with the reverse charge, right? now Now the question comes, if I am a person who is totally dealing in exempt supplies, right? And I have availed any kind of service on which reverse charge is applicable, right? Whether I have to take GST registration in order to comply with the reverse charge transaction or not. If I'm dealing in taxable, then it is fine. There is no threshold. I have to take GST registration and pay tax under reverse charge. But if I'm totally dealing in exempt supplies, whether I have to take GST registration, There is a question by Sandeep G. If we start a new company with a turnover of less than 40 lakhs, but availing some advocate services which are under RCM, do we need to get registered compulsorily? Yes, sir. You have to take GST registration because you are doing a business, furtherance or supply, right? If you were an individual, then RCM won't have been applicable to you. But you have started your new venture, a new company, you have started your own business. As per section 24, you have to take registration, right? I hope I am clear. Uh, Sir, if both the supplier, the second question says if both supplier and buyer have not crossed the threshold limit, still is it mandatory to register under GST? No, no. Then you don't have to take GST registration. But if the supplier, if the supplier is an advocate, right, and you have started your new venture as Sandeep ji has asked in his query, then the new company, the buyer, has to take GST registration in order to comply section 24. If the buyer is availing any kind of service which is covered under RCM, then you have to take registration. There is no threshold benefit. I hope I am clear. Right. Now, the question that I was asking, Rajni ji, I will take up your query. I'll take up your query in my later presentation because I will answer this query in detail by taking all the advanced ruling related to this. Right? Yeah. So let's move forward. So what I was asking to you now, suppose there is a hospital. They have not taken GST registration because healthcare services are totally exempt under GST, and they have availed any kind of advocate services which is under RCM. So the question was whether they have to take GST registration. So there were various advanced rulings, Sonaka publication, Medical Scan and Diagnostic Research Center, AAR Kerala, in which it was held that even though the supplier was in the field of healthcare services, which was totally exempt, registration would be liable if he is liable for 93 or 94. 9394 is reverse charge section, right? But in my view, registration is not compulsory if section 24 conditions are applied, provided section 23 conditions are satisfied. What I'm trying to say, if you have read this section, section 24 is overruling section 22. It is not overruling section 23. So, in my view, see, most advanced rulings are in the favor of department, right? So they are pro revenue. So if you read the section, in my view, if you are totally dealing in exempt suppliers and you have taken any kind of reverse charge services which are covered under reverse charge, then you don't have to take GST registration. That is my view. Because section 24 is overruling section 22, not 23 registration. All the kind of import of services, everything we'll cover later. For availing GST credit, yes, you have to take GST registration. You cannot avail any ITC if you have not taken GST registration. We'll also discuss when you pay GST under RCM, that has to be deposited by only cash ledger and you can take that credit, right? Yeah. Akash, I'll share my PPT to the organizers. You can take that PPT later, right?
Yes, sir. We'll share your PPTs with all the participants.
Limit for applicability of RCM. Amit ji, there I've already discussed. There is no limit for RCM. There is no threshold. If you have started your business, or you are doing any kind of business, and you have availed any kind of services that we will be discussing in detail later in my presentation, then you have to take compulsory GST registration. You have to deposit the supplier's tax on his behalf to the government, and you can take that credit after depositing that tax. I think there are many questions. Let us take all the questions at the end only, because maybe your queries get sorted out later in the presentation, right? So now let us discuss time of supply, right? So what is the relevance of time of supply? So time of supply, whether it is of goods, whether it is of service, time of supply tells you when you have to deposit the tax to the government, right? Example, if I have raised an invoice in October, I have to deposit my tax on 20th of the next month. So for October GST at 3V, I have to deposit by 20th of November. So time of supply tells me when I have to deposit the tax to the government. If I'm not complying with the time of supply provisions, then interest will be applicable, because there will be a delay in depositing of tax to the government, right? So time of supply of goods, time of supply of services, right? Now I'll discuss time of supply of services with an example, right? So in GST, both goods and services are covered under reverse charge. So if you have purchased any kind of goods, and government has defined that RCM is applicable on purchase of that goods, you have to deposit the tax. Similarly, uh, and then time of supply of goods, section 12 subsection 3, you have to comply with. Secondly, the time of supply of services. So what the provisions say? It says earliest of the following: date of payment as entered in the books of accounts of the recipient, or date on which payment is debited in his bank account, whichever is earlier, right? Secondly, the date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice. So it says time of supply earliest of the two: payment, when you make the payment to the vendor, or 60 days from the date of invoice, whichever is earlier. Then you have to then it is the your due date. Suppose the time of supply falls today. Today is October. So October is the month, and for October month you have to deposit your tax on the following next month 20th date, so that is 20th November. Now let us explain. I'll explain you with this example. Have a look for 2 minutes and try to answer this question, right? So this is a practical case study. So when we do GST audit for our clients, these are the common mistakes that are generally conducted by our clients, right? So ABC Limited is a concern, manufacturing concern, and they have taken legal services, which is under reverse charge, right? So there are suppose two legal firms, right? In the first case, date of invoice is 17th August, and the payment is made on 10th of September, and they have deposited GST on 20th of October, right? And in the second case, date of invoice is 10th September, they have made payment to the vendor on 10th of January, and they have deposited the GST on 20th of February, right? So uh, you have to tell me whether in the first case they have complied the time of supply provisions. Just say yes or no. Do participate in the session. I'm asking for the first one. No, yes, no, yes. So mix answers, right? Yeah. I would request you all to please participate. So, in order to be you get and you get attentive in the session, right? So they are mixed replies, right? Now, what about second? Whether they have complied with the time of supply provisions for legal advisors. No, no. Rajesh ji is saying no. Shivam is saying no. Sachin ji is saying no. Right. Okay. So this is what I was saying. So there were mixed answers, right? So in the first case, date of invoice was 17th of August, right? And they have made payment to vendor on 10th of September, right? And if September is the time of supply, they must have deposited GST on the due date to 20th of October while filing their GST at 3B, right? Time of supply is 10th of September. So there is no delay in deposition of GST to the government. In the second case, they have made payment to vendor on 10th of January and they have deposited GST on 20th February. So they have understood that time of supply for the second case is January. However, they have delayed the payment for more than 60 days. So the second point, 60 days from the date of issue of invoice. So date of invoice is important, comes into picture. So date of invoice is 10th of September. So you have to calculate 60 days from the date of invoice, and which comes to 9th of November, right? So November is the time of supply. For November, they should have deposited the tax in December, but they have deposited GST in February. So there is a delay of 62 days, right? So now GST has to be deposited along with the interest of 62 days because you have delayed the deposition of GST, right? Right. So I'm moving forward. If you have any question related to these, please let me know. Else I'm moving forward. Pooja is saying, please explain due date in second case. See, Pooja, I'm just repeating the second case again. Time of supply says date of payment or 60 days from the date of invoice, whichever is earlier. So the date of invoice was 10th of September, right? They have made payment to the vendor on 10th of January. That is more than 60 days. October, November, December, more than 3 months, right? And and they have deposited GST considering January as their time of supply. However, when you see the second case, it says 60 days from the date of invoice or date of payment, whichever is earlier. So the time of supply was 9th of November. I hope I'm clear right now. Abhiji, I'm just covering the documentation part in the next slide. So due date is November. So 20th of December, 20th of September, 20th of December is the correct due date uh, in the second case, and they have deposited tax in February, right? Due date is 20th December. Yeah. So now input tax credit and documents you have to prepare under RCM. So now so now we have understood that GST has to be deposited by recipient under reverse charge, right? Now the question comes whether reverse charge has to be deposited in cash. So there are two ways of depositing tax to the government. You discharge your tax by cash, right? The second way is by using your input tax credit. So by two ways, Section 49 defines that you can deposit tax to the government, right? But reverse charge has to be paid by cash only. You can take the ITC if it is eligible under 17 subsection 5, but you have to discharge reverse charge liability by cash. Now, the legal provisions from which this outcome is coming is to subsection 82, which defines output tax, which excludes tax payable by the supplier on reverse charge basis, right? And section 49(4) says that credit ledger can be used for making payment towards output tax. And in the definition of output tax, they have excluded tax payable on reverse charge basis, right? So reverse charge has to be paid in cash only, right? Let's move forward. Now, input tax. So input tax is defined under 2 subsection 62, which includes subsection 93945354, right? And correspondingly of the state and union territory GST Act. So if you are paying any kind of tax under reverse charge, you can take the ITC. And how you can take ITC, that is defined under GST in the definition itself. So it is an eligible ITC, right? Now the documentation part, right? What is the purpose of reverse charge? Sir, the purpose of reverse charge was to basically that is a move by government so that more and more taxpayers get registered themselves under GST. Secondly, secondly, we'll cover what our services are covered under RCM. So the main purpose was uh, to shift the liability of deposition of tax on the recipient, because if when we will discuss, you will come to know the GTA. So basically that all these transportation truck services, these are not much educated, these are not all well versed or well educated they are not able to comply with the various laws. So in order to protect the revenue, and they have shifted that deposition of tax on the recipient. So main purpose was this. Secondly, government wants कि most of the people get registered themselves under GST, so that more and more people get involved in the business transaction from the registered person only, not from the unregistered one. Because there is also one provision that came when July 17 GST came into picture, that if you are doing any business with the unregistered person, you have to deposit his tax. So people were not doing business transactions from the persons who were not registered under GST, right? So is it possible to do transaction happen between both unregistered parties under GST? Yes. Yes, Shivam, it can definitely happen. We'll discuss all these transactions later, right? So now the documentation part. Section 31, subsection 3, clause F. Section 31, 3, clause F of the GST Act says that a registered person who is liable to pay tax under subsection 3 or subsection 4 of section 9 shall issue an invoice in respect of goods or services both received by him. So what section 31 is trying to say, that you can take ITC, but as unregistered person, he is not registered, then how he will give you an invoice? So for availing input tax credit, the recipient himself has to generate a self invoice, right? And that self invoice, on that document you can avail ITC. So that is the documentation part. The recipient has to issue an invoice himself, to him only, in order to avail ITC for the reverse charge taxes paid, right? If the buyer take goods from supplier in credit basis, uh, Arabinda Dhara, you are saying if the buyer take goods from supplier on credit basis and take input tax credit RCM, but did not pay amount to supplier. Sir, first of all, you can take ITC of reverse charge only when you discharge that tax, right? Unless and until you pay tax under RCM, you cannot avail that credit. So, as per ITC rules prescribed in section 16, an invoice issued in accordance with provision 31, as discussed above, subject to payment of tax. So, you can avail credit of RCM only when you pay the tax to the government. I hope I am clear, right? Yeah. Let's move forward. If you have any doubts related to this right now, you can ask me right now, else I'm moving forward. Now, the Pooja is asking, please explain consolidated check. So I've already explained you the self-invoicing part, right? So the consolidated invoice says if you have, if for says for the month of October, you have availed legal services, GTS services, and many services which are covered under RCM. So, to ease off the compliance burden on the recipient, government has come up with a provision of consolidated invoice, which says that in case the recipient generates one self invoice for each transactions, at the end of the month the recipient can generate only single transaction, can generate a invoice, consolidated invoice for all the transactions covered in the month. So a consolidated invoice for all the transactions can be generated, right? So self invoice for all the transaction. So there is a one consolidated invoice on which you can take ITC, right? GST for purchase of goods, sir, we will cover shortly, right? So if any of our viewer has filed any GST return, GST at 3B, uh, then then you must be Sachin ji is asking who will be the service provider in consolidated invoice. Sir, as I have mentioned, service provider are can be 10, can be more than one, but you have to generate one single consolidated invoice for all the transactions. So you can add both supplier and recipient, the same one. So if I'm X, you have to write supplier X and recipient is also X. In that invoice, you have to mention the date of invoice. It is all prescribed in the invoice rules format. The nature, from whom you have taken service, his name, amount, applicable rate of GST, GST amount, total it. So that total GST you have to deposit at the end of the month, right? Sir, I'll cover all the transactions which are covered under RCM. Other than that, if you have any kind of query for all the topics that I have discussed till now, you can ask. Rakesh ji is asking what is the time limit for RCM for registered user. Sir, as soon as RCM is applicable, you have to take GST registration. So if I have availed any kind of legal services as of now, so suppose uh, I have availed any kind of legal services today, I have to take GST registration ASAP in order to comply with the section 24 of GST. I have to deposit by 20th of November. So I have to take GST registration before that. No, Rakesh ji, there is no any kind of limit. So the transaction value is the value on which GST has to be discharged. So the rate is different on different services. So there is no kind of any abatement or partial reverse charge. So for example, to say if you have taken 1 lakh rupees of services and rate GST rate is 18%, then you have to deposit 18,000 to the government. There is no limit in any transaction, right? Renu, you can generate consolidated invoice for all the parties and all the transactions in one single invoice. All these your queries will be addressed later in the presentation, right? So now, can ITC be availed in the same month in which reverse charge is paid? So if you have filed any GSTR 3B, uh, you must be knowing that if you have entered any kind of reverse charge liability, say this is the screenshot of GSTR 3B output. In this D point, invert supply liable to reverse charge, right? In this basically tab, you have to enter the amount on which you have to deposit that tax, right? So if I've availed any kind of advocate legal services, say 1 lakh, and GST is 18,000, I have to put this figure in point 3.1 D, total taxable value 1 lakh, and tax, central tax, state tax 9,000. And then I can take credit of this 18,000, 9,000 while filing the return of the same month in which I am depositing this tax. Say for the month of October, I have prepared GSTR 3B. I'm filing GSTR 3B for the month of October, right? And I have to deposit 18,000 under reverse charge to the government. I can avail that 18,000 in the same month itself, right? So it is not like that I'll pay in October and I will take credit in next month in November, right? So you have to pay this 18,000 in cash, and then you can avail ITC of that 18,000 in the same month, right? Yes. Now we'll be covering all the services and goods which are covered under reverse charge. Before I start discussing each services in detail, we should always know that there can be a scenario in which the supplier by mistake get deposit that GST by himself, right? And the recipient is not able to deposit that tax due to lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, or by any error, right? So you have to note that if the law has said that recipient has to deposit the tax under reverse charge, right? Then the recipient has to deposit the tax to the government. You cannot take an excuse that the supplier has discharged the tax to the government, right? So discharging of liability by supplier would not render the liability discharge, since the law imposes obligations on the recipient, right? So the only way is that the recipient of supply will be liable to discharge the taxes, and the relief available to the supplier would only be by way of application of refund under section 54, right? So if supplier has deposited the tax mistakenly, then he has to apply for refund for the excessive tax he has deposited to the government, and recipient has to deposit that tax to the government again, right? Mansi is asking, sir, in case of a person supplying RCM services while filing GSTR 3B, his supply will be treated as zero rated. Very good question, Mansi. I had to cover this point because I had to cover this point, but I think due to scarcity of time, I would have to leave certain topic. So, suppose I am filing GSTR 3B for an advocate, right? For a person, let us say advocate, whose services are covered under RCM, right? So uh, so the taxable value for the month of October is, say, suppose 1 lakh, right? Tax has to be deposited by recipient, as advocate is the supplier. Recipient has to deposit the tax. So where should I write this 1 lakh and the tax amount? Where should I write this 1 lakh? In A, B, C, or D? Just answer A, B, C, or D. Whether it will be a nil rated exempt supply, outward taxable supply, or it will be a zero rated supply. A, B, C, D, A. Mix answers. Any more tries? Yeah. Sir, we have to understand while filing GST at 3B for any client, or for even if you are filing GST at 3B for yourself, you should know what is the meaning of each word that is written in the GST at 3B. So there is a difference between zero rated supply, nil rated supply, exempted supply. Zero rated supplies are those supplies which are exports. So if you are exporting any goods, services, or supplying goods to special economic zones, EOU, then it is an export. It is a zero rated supply, right? What is nil rated supply, exempted supply? Exempt supplies are those supplies which are taxable, but government has issued a notification and exempted that specific goods or services from GST. So, for example, say a dry fruit, almonds or rice, it is exempted from tax, but it is taxable. Government has issued a notification, exemption notification, and has specifically exempted that product. So it is an exempt supply, right? Now comes our case. I am an advocate. I'm supplying services to my client. It is not an export. It is not zero rated. So B is crossed. Now whether I have to put it in D? No. Inward supply. It is not my inward supply. I'm providing my services. So D is also not the correct answer. Now comes A or C. Is it C? No. It is not exempt supply. Sir, it is an outward taxable supply. It is a taxable supply. It is just that the tax has to be discharged by recipient. It is my outward taxable supply. So, in total taxable value, you have to write 1 lakh. In central tax, state tax, integrated tax as applicable, you have to write zero. You have to write nothing, right? So you have reported your sale to government. However, the tax has to be deposited by recipient, right? So you have to write nothing in the tax part, because if you write that amount in table number A, you have it will automatically calculate that liability, and you have to deposit the tax. Unless and until you will not deposit the tax to the government, it will not file your GST R3B. So you have to write zero in the tax column. You have to just report your taxable value, right? And while filing your GSTR1, in which you report your sale invoice wise, there is an option of ticking supply attract reverse charge. So you have to write all you have to write the name, GSTN, if your recipient is having GSTN, your invoice value, tax, not tax, so the invoice value part, the taxable value part, right? So automatically your GSTR 3B and your GSTR 1 gets correlated, and your recipient, if you know what is GSTR2, when he will check his GSTR2, there will be an invoice coming under the checkbox or reverse charge under my name, right? So that recipient has to deposit that tax to the government. So you have informed the government that my supplies are under reverse charge, and the recipient has to deposit that tax. I hope I'm clear. I think I can move forward. Renu ji, I think your return session is pending, so I think it is better that the speaker covers that returns part, and then you will be able to know how the returns are filed. You just understand the provisions right now, how to put that in which tab, right? So I'm deliberately taking all the queries right now, because as the session moves on, uh, there are various queries at the end which remains unanswered. So I'll try to cover all the queries right now only. So if you have any query till now, please let me know. Richa has asked a question that for exempt supply we do not need any registration. Otherwise, we need registrations. Yes, if you are dealing in totally exempt supplies and you have availed any kind of RCM services, my view is that you do not have to take any GST registration. Consider section 22, 23, 24 as explained by me. But there are various advanced ruling, but you have to make your own judgment. In order to avoid litigation, it is advisable that you take GST registration. But again, if you take GST registration, your compliance burden comes into picture. You have to file your returns then, right? Yes, Rajesh ji, PPT will be shared. Yeah. So let's move forward. Amir ji, I'll explain e-commerce later. Pradeep ji, how GST will be deposited without GST registration? Sir, there is no way. You have to take GST registration. You cannot deposit GST without taking registration. Persana ji, whether RCM is applicable to services provided by government or local authority. Sir, we'll cover later in this presentation. So let's move forward. So these are few notifications in which each service, on which goods or on which services RCM is applicable, right? So notification 4 oblique 2017 dated 20th June 2017. See, before GST there was service tax. So service tax In service tax also RCM was there, right? But in GST only, there was in service tax there was no provisions on reverse charge on goods. It was only reverse charge was applicable only on services. In GST, RCM is applicable on certain goods as mentioned here and on certain services that are coming from service tax only. So on these 8 goods, description is there. If you are supplier of goods of these services of these goods and you are one of the supplier and the recipient is registered and if the recipient is registered, so if you are uh, dealing in these goods and you are registered under GST, then you have to deposit the tax as applicable on that item under reverse charge. So I'll be not covering the RCM applicable on goods in detail because these are limited provisions that are applicable mostly on agriculture is. So now comes the service part. Notification 13 oblique 2017. In that notification, all the services as defined in section 9 subsection 3 are covered. So I'll discuss all these services in detail. Also, there are few services that are not used in normal routine. So I'll just read that read that clause and move forward. For certain services, we need more explanation and case studies that I've already covered here. So the GTA, you just listen all the provisions related to GTA. I have few case studies, right? Then I'll take any questions on GTA. Then we can move forward on the next service, right? So what does the notification say? It says GTA who has not paid central tax at the rate 6% or state tax at the rate 6%. So on GTA services, there are two GST rates, 5% and 12%. So right, CGST, SGST, so 6, 1.5, 2.5, 2.5, right? So notification says if your supplier is a GTA. Now, what is a GTA? GTA is a person who basically issues a consignment note. So we can say these truck drivers, when you ask your transporter to deliver goods from Karnataka to Delhi, they issue a bill T, a consignment note, who is the consigner, who is the consignee. So if if the transporter if the transporter issues a consignment note or a bill T, then only that is a GTA. Suppose I have to transfer my goods from a location in Delhi to another location in Delhi, and I have booked a small vehicle, a small rickshaw or any small Chetak or a small automobile, and he issues a small a note of cash voucher type, then that person is not a GTA. So every transportation service is not a GTA service. For for a service to be classified as a GTA service, you have to receive a consignment note. If that service is covered under GTA, then only RCM comes into picture. If it is not a GTA, he's not issuing a consignment note, he's not issuing a bill T, then it is not a GTA service, no applicability of RCM, right? Now, if the supplier is a GTA, is providing a good transportation agency services to these recipient, any factory, any society, any person registered under a GST, any body corporate, any company, any LLP, any partnership firm, then the recipient has to deposit that tax, right? So there are two GST rates, 5%, 12%, right? So a GTA can charge 5% on the invoice. A GTA can also charge 12% of invoice. What is the difference? If he charges 5%, he cannot avail benefit of input tax credit. If he charges 12%, then he can avail the benefit of ITC. Under 12%, there is no reverse charge. If your GTA is charging 12% in his invoice, then recipient is not covered under under reverse charge, right? That 12% will be deposited by GTA only. So 12% is forward charge, that is the normal mechanism, and 5% is the reverse charge. So let us discuss all these four cases and then we can take up all your queries. So in the first case, if GTA is unregistered and recipient is registered, then obviously RCM come into picture. Applicable rate for RCM is 5%. So GTA will raise invoice or he will not raise any kind of invoice. So suppose taxable value is 100 rupees, on that 5%, 5 rupees will be deposited by recipient, right? Now comes case 2. GTA is registered, GTA can get themselves registered, there is no bar, and recipient is registered. Now, can GTA charge 5% on the invoice? No. As the liability to deposit that tax is on the recipient, GTA cannot charge 5% from you. The recipient has to deposit that 5 rupees to the government, right? So GTA will not charge any kind of amount on his invoice, any kind of GST on the invoice, even if he is registered. There is a column in invoice rules which says whether reverse charge is applicable. You have to mandatory show that box in your invoice. So on that invoice there will be yes in the on the invoice of GTA, right? Now comes the case 3. GTA registered, but now he's charging 12%, 12 rupees on 100 rupees on the invoice that is given to recipient. Now it is a normal transaction because if he is charging 12%, GTA will deposit 12% to the government, and that 12% credit ITC will be taken by registered person, registered recipient. So this is the normal mechanism. If GT is charging 12% and this is forward charge, there is no RCM applicability, right? Now comes case 4, the last one. GTA is registered and the recipient is unregistered. Recipient can also be an unregistered person. Suppose I am a normal user. I have taken any kind of GTA services to deliver my furniture or any kind of personal goods from Delhi to say Punjab, right? So in that case, RCM would not be applicable. It is not a business transaction, right? I am not liable to take GST registration. Remember the word supply. I'm not a dealer. That is not my business. That is for personal use. So in that case 5% of as the option that is taken by GTA, it can be 5% or 12%. So that will be deposited by the GTA itself, right? I hope I am clear. I have discussed all the cases. Now please ask me what all you have related to GTA. Any questions related to GTA? Sir, please don't ask questions related to GST or 9. I can answer all the questions, but due to limitation of time, I cannot answer all your queries. I'll share my email and contact details. You can ask me on WhatsApp or on call. I'll repeat case number 3. Any more questions related to GTA? These are the possible 4 cases on GTA, right? So there can be a situation, your client is suppose a manufacturing concern, and the GTA there is freight expense in your P&L, right? And when you see the invoices of GTA, they are charging 5% on their invoices, and your client, your manufacturing concern has paid him 105 rupees, right? And has taken credit of 5 rupees, and your manufacturing concern, your client has also deposited 5 rupees. What I have said, 5 rupees is charged by the supplier, also 5 rupees is discharged by your manufacturing concern also. But ideally, GTA cannot charge 5% from that manufacturing concern, because the onus to deposit the tax is on the recipient. So recipient has to pay the tax to the government, right? So case 2. So there are two GST rates, 5%, 12%. 5% under reverse charge, 12% under normal mechanism, forward charge. So if GTA is registered and recipient is registered, and GTA has opted for 5% rate, right? Then, as per the case discussed above, as per the provisions, RCM has to be deposited by the recipient. 5% will be deposited by recipient even if GTA is registered, because the onus is on the recipient, not the GTA, right? And case 3 is normal case. It is like a normal mechanism, no reverse charge. GTA is registered and he is charging 12%. What the provision says, GTA who has not paid central tax and state tax at the rate 12%. So if the supplier is charging 12%, he is out of this notification. So this is the third case only which I am discussing. I hope I am clear. If instead of GTA the service provider falls under transportation services, Mr. Roy, as I have told you, if he's not a GTA, he's not issuing any consignment note, then there is no RCM. You have to check the relevant notification for transportation service. I think it would be 18%. There are also various exemptions, so you have to check that for specific service, right? Mr. Santosh is saying in case number 4, recipient is unregistered, then how can we issue consignment note with 5% GST? Recipient has to take GST registration in that case. Sir, uh, as I've already explained in all the 3 cases, right? There can be a situation, as I have given you an example. I am a normal person. I'm not doing any kind of business. I have asked a GTA to transport my personal furniture to some other location, to Karnataka. I'm in Delhi, right? So I don't have to take GST registration. I'm not doing any kind of business. So furtherance of business is very important. In that case, GST has to be deposited. It is not like every kind of GTA service, every time GTA is under reverse charge. In that case, if GT is registered, he will charge 5% on that consignment note. He will give it, he will give to me, or 12% as applicable, the option he has chosen. I mean, and will deposit the tax under normal charge. I hope I'm clear, Mr. Santosh. Right? Let's move forward. I hope GTA is clear. Yeah. I'm going slow, but I want every doubt is cleared, right? If both GTA and recipient are unregistered, so then there will be no reverse charge. If both of them are unregistered, let's move forward. These are certain exemptions. If there is any kind of exemption, then there is no RCM, right? So if there is an exemption, then there is no tax, and when there is no tax, then there is no RCM also, right? Now comes the legal service. Now I'll move a little bit fast because I have to cover all the services. Major deliberation is yet to be discussed, right? So any kind of legal service. So services provided by an advocate uh, by way of legal services directly or indirectly to a business entity, right? So, an individual advocate or a senior advocate or firm of advocates, any legal firm is the supplier. So, I think the heading is wrong, supplier of services and recipient of services, right? So, if any advocate is giving any kind of services to any business entity located in the taxable territory, then that recipient has to deposit the tax, right? So there are also exemption to legal services. So if an advocate is giving any kind of services to a person other than a business entity, again I am a normal person. I'm not dealing any kind. I'm not dealing any kinds of goods or service. I have taken a personal opinion from an advocate. Then there is no GST, so no RCM, right? If an advocate is giving services to a business entity whose an aggregate turnover is 20 lakhs, so basically small entity, if he's giving any advocate services to a small business entity whose turnover is up to 20 lakhs for that entity, then also RCM is not applicable because there is an exemption. So no GST, no RCM. So I think legal one, it is clear. So you have to also check exemption notification also. So it is not that RCM will be applicable on all legal services. You have to first check RCM notification, then check is there any kind of exemption notification. If that transaction is exempt from GST, then there will be no RCM, right? Now, arbitral services, you can read this. I'll move forward. Now, this is a I would say very it was a very controversial provision, services by director, and it was cleared by a circular from CBIC on the applicability of RCM on director remuneration and other issues. So I'll discuss in detail, right? Sandeep ji, sir, Sandeep ji, you are correct. I was, see, sir, you have to connect exemption notification also, right? If in general you say I'm a business, I'm doing a business and I've availed any kind of advocate services, is RCM applicable? Yes, yes, right. But if there is a specific exemption for this, then RCM won't be applicable, right, sir? I was in the start of session, so I have to basically give you a basic fund of RCM, right? So we go with basics, clear your fundamentals, then we go technical, right? So there is a specific exemption for this transaction, right? Yeah, thanks. Now, service by directors. So what this entry says, it says if the supplier of service is director of a company or a body corporate. Say for example, Mukesh Ambani. Services supplied by a director of a company or a body corporate to the said company located in taxable territory. Recipient is obviously the company or body corporate. So there were few adverse advance ruling, Elcon Consulting, Claycraft India, in which it was held that the director remuneration paid by the company to the directors was under RCM, and the company has to deposit that tax to the government under RCM, right? But it is important that you should know that as per Schedule 3 of the GST Act say that these transactions do not qualify for supply, and one of the entry is employee employer relationship, right? So if an employee is if the employer is giving any salary to the employee, we cannot say that employee is providing any kind of service to the employer. It is out of the ambit of supply. So employee relationship is out of GST. So now what is important, that there can be various directors in the company: non-executive director, independent director, nominee directors, whole-time director, managing directors. So the circular issued on 10th June 2020 has clarified the GST applicability on RCM on director remuneration. What that circular has said, it has said that you have to review the agreement of the director with the company, right? If the company is paying to the director and deducting TDS under the head salary, right? He's a whole time director and he has been given salary like an employee of the company. He's working under an employee agreement also, employee agreement only, working on day to day activities of the company. Then there will be no GST on the remuneration given by the company to the director. However, if TDS is deducted under professional head 194J, right, right, he is not we cannot say that he is an employee of the company, right? So he is giving services as a professional, and TDS is deducted under section 194J, professional and technical services. That can be independent director or nominee director. Under that scenario, reverse charge would be applicable, right? Then 18% GST is the rate. The company has to deposit that 18% on the remuneration paid to these directors. I hope I'm clear. Can I move forward? If you have any query related to services by directors, please let me know, else I'm moving forward. Okay, let's move forward. Now, this is a new entry. Services of providing security personnel, right? So security, this is effective from 1st January 2019, right? Security services provided by a person other than a body corporate to a registered person, right? Supplier of service is any person other than a body corporate. So body corporate is basically a company. So if the supplier of service is a person other than a body corporate, like an individual, HUF, partnership firm, LLP, and recipient is registered, then the recipient has to deposit that tax. Just have a look in these cases. So in first case, partnership firm is registered. The supplier of security services is a partnership firm and it is registered. RCM will be applicable at the rate 18%. Any person other than a body corporate is a supplier. Yes, RCM will be applicable. Unregistered company, recipient is registered. No RCM. Notification says supplier of service is a person other than a body corporate, but it is a company, then RCM would be not be applicable. In the third case, unregistered partnership, recipient is registered. Whether RCM will be applicable? Yes. Notification says that any supplier of service other than a body corporate, it is nowhere mentioned in the notification that the supplier should be registered. It is just that it should be a person other than a body corporate, right? Is it clear? Can I move forward? I'm waiting for uh, any kind of queries if you have. So Anupam is asking, so if a body corporate gives services, there is no GST at all, normal or RCM? Yes. If that company is below the threshold limit, they obviously they will not take any GST registration. So no RCM. Yes. Anupam, if company is above threshold limit, then they will obviously take GST registration. And if it is a company they have registered, then RCM will be applicable. The service provider, the service provider has to be a company in order to qualify an RCM. Whether it is registered or unregistered, it is immaterial, right? Read the notification again, it will be clear. Any person other than a body corporate. It is not saying the word registered or unregistered, right? If the supplier is a company or a body corporate, right? They have started their new venture and they are providing services to security services to Reliance, which is registered, then RCM will not be applicable because they are a company. Registered or not registered under GST is not relevant. But suppose they have crossed the threshold limit and they have taken GST registration, then RCM will be applicable. Am I clear now? Is it Anupam, is it fine? Can I go ahead? Pooja, is it okay now? Okay. Anupam, we can discuss it later, no issues. Yeah. Now comes ocean freight. See, this is very technical and very controversial too. So I think I have left only 15 minutes in my session, and I have to cover many provisions. I am unable to discuss most of my presentation. I'll try to extend my time if it is possible. But let us explain each provisions in detail, right? So ocean freight. So first of all, you have to understand what is ocean freight, right? So what is the entry? Supplier of service is a person located in non-taxable territory, right? And what is the description? Services supplied by a person located in non-taxable territory by transportation of goods by a vessel from a place outside India to the custom station clearance in India, and recipient of service is importer, right? Now you have to understand what is the definition of recipient. Where a consideration is payable for the supply of goods or services, the person who is liable to pay for that consideration. I'll discuss this in very detail, so you have to remember who is the recipient. And in reverse charge, recipient has to deposit the tax to the government, right? Service recipient. And service recipient is defined as the person who is liable to pay the consideration to the supplier. Remember this, right? Now, understand this provision. So, imports can happen by two ways: under CIF or FOB contract, right? So importer imports goods from outside India by two ways: whether it can be a CIF contract, cost including freight, or it can be a FOB contract, freight on board. Now, what is the difference between these two transactions? First, you understand what are these two transactions. Then we will come up on the reverse charge notification again, and then we will decide whether this applicability of reverse charge on importer is correct or not. Then we will discuss the High Court judgment. This case, this notification, this specific entry is pending uh, to be decided with Honorable Supreme Court of India. Right. So listen to this very carefully. Right. Now, what is a FOB contract? John, suppose I am ABC Limited. Right. Exporter is in US. John Inc. In FOB contract, ABC Limited will be liable to transport the goods from USA to Indian customs. To say that the liability to transport the goods from US to India is on ABC Limited, right? So ABC Limited will appoint a vessel, a CHA or a ship liner, and will instruct him to transport the goods from USA to his premises in India. So John's liability responsibility will be to transport the goods to the customs of US only, right? Right? So ABC has appointed his own ship liner to transport the goods from US to India, right? Who is the recipient of service? ABC Limited, because he will pay to the ship liner for the freight he will charge from US to India, because he has appointed the ship liner, correct? Now, what is a CIF contract? In FOB contract, freight is paid by the importer. He has appointed the ship liner to transport the goods from US to India. In CIF contract, goods will be delivered by John to ABC at custom clearance in India. To say John will appoint John will appoint the ship liner. John INC's is responsible for transporting goods from US customs to India. So ABC Limited has entered in a contract with John that I will pay you $10,000 for the goods, including all the freight. So ABC Limited wants the goods at his place in $10,000. So freight is included. So John will charge $10,000 and he will be responsible for delivering the goods from US to India. So he will appoint his ship liner. John will be the recipient of service of the ship liner. Am I correct? Right? Now read this notification again. In FOB contract, supplier of service is located in non-taxable territory. Is it? Let us first discuss CIF contract. In CIF contract, who is the supplier? The foreign ship liner that is appointed by John, right? Okay. Description of service, vessel, ship liner, yeah, correct. But who is the recipient? Who is paying that ship liner? Is it ABC Limited, the importer, or John? John is paying to the ship liner. Recipient is John INC. And what I have said, who is the recipient? Who is liable to pay the consideration? So if in CIF contract, recipient is a person who is located in non-taxable territory, John, then how government can say that GST has to be deposited by importer? Importer is not the recipient. Recipient is John INC. So what various high courts and have decided that in case of a CIF contract, the contract for transportation is entered by the seller, that is foreign exporter John INC, and not the buyer. The importer is not the recipient for service of transportation of goods. Accordingly, ocean freight that is charged, on which RCM is charged, is not permissible in law, right? So I, it is a little bit technical, right? So basically, this particular entry is now challenged in Supreme Court, right? So importers, the GST department has issue notices to the importer that you are not discharging RCM liability, to the government, right? And importers have continuously denying by mentioning these high court judgments and many other judgments that have been taken, that have been issued by various courts, that we are not the recipient, then how we are liable to pay GST and the reverse charge on ocean freight. I hope I am clear, right? So this is a controversial issue, right? The cost is reimbursed by ABC is a separate issue. Obviously, if 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 John is sending goods to ABC, he will obviously charge that freight value from John. That is their contract. He will obviously increase his price if he's sending goods under CF contract. So that is immaterial. Recipient of service is the person, John, right? I think I can move forward. Now import of service. So uh, earlier in my presentation, I told you to remember this section 7 definition, right? So import of service is covered under RCM. So if any person is taking any kind of services from outside India, then RCM will be applicable, right? Section 7 Part B says that import of services for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business, right? So if again I am a normal person not doing any kind of business, and I have availed any kind of import, any kind of service from outside India, then I have to deposit GST under reverse charge. If we consider this provision, I have to take GST registration. I have to take GST registration for that single transaction under section 24 and deposit GST under reverse charge, right? Now, there is an exemption notification 9 oblique 2017. I told you in case of advocate services also, right? So there is an exemption notification which says serial number 10 of that notification says services received from provider of service located in non-taxable territory by central government authority, or an individual in relation to any purpose other than commerce, industry, or any other business or profession. Means to say, if I am importing any kind of services for a purpose other than commerce, I was importing service for my personal benefit. So there is a exemption notification. It is a supply, but it is exempt because it is not for business or commerce, right? So I'm out of GST. No GST, no RCM, right? Am I clear? Can I move forward?
Yes, please, sir. If there would be any doubts, they would ask us, sir.
Okay. So now there is one more point in the definition of import of services. So import of service is defined in IGST Act, which says The supplier of service is located outside India, recipient is located in India, and the place of supply of service is in India. So place of supply, again, it becomes very important. So place of supply, section 12, section 13, it is defined in the IGST Act. Again, it takes another 2 to 3 hours to explain all the place of supply provisions. For example, ABC Limited gets an order from foreign agent abroad to whom it pays commission. It is very usual. A company in India pays commission to foreign agents because they help overseas buyers and get them connected to the Indian entities, right? So whether that commission that is paid by the company to foreign agents abroad will classify as an import of service and GST will be paid by the company in India? No. If you read this entry and you miss place of supply, then GST would be applicable. But if you read the definition of import of service considering the place of supply, then GST won't be applicable, because as per the place of supply of services provided by intermediary would be the location of service provider, that is place where is registered. Now the foreign agent is registered outside India, so the place of supply is out of India, so it is not an import of service because the place of supply of service should be in India. So any kind of foreign commission paid by the Indian company to the foreign agents is not covered under RCM. So you have to, while reviewing the financials, while filing compliances, while filing returns, you have to see whether it is a consultancy services that is being for which the company is paying abroad to the vendor, or it is a commission. So position gets changes from as soon as the nature of transaction changes, right? Now I'll discuss this renting of motor vehicle in short. Then I think the major portion would be clear, and then we can discuss the e-commerce part, and then we can close the today's session. And if any of the viewers have any questions, then I can take up. So, service of renting of motor vehicle. This notification is effective from 31st December 2019, which says that services provided by way of renting of any motor vehicle designed to carry passenger, where the cost of fuel is included in the consideration charged from the service recipient provided to a body corporate. So renting of motor vehicle provided to a body corporate. And who is the supplier? Any person, any person other than a body corporate who does not issue an invoice charging tax at the rate 12%. CGST 6, SGST 6. So what can be the scenarios? These six scenarios can happen. Remember, supplier registered or unregistered, like in case of security services. The supplier of service should be a person other than a body corporate, right? 5%, 12%, like in case of GTA. If the supplier is under 5%, he cannot avail ITC. If it is under 12%, he can avail ITC. So in the first case, if the supplier is a registered person other than a body corporate and recipient is body corporate, applicability कब होगी? In case the supplier is not charging GST at the rate 12%, applicable GST rate would be 5%. So
Sir, sorry for interrupting
yeah,
you in between, but sir, it's almost the time. Can we, do
okay,
it quickly and
yeah, yeah,
then take up the questions quickly
no
afterwards,
issues,
sir?
no issues, no issues.
Thank you, sir.
So basically these are more, there are more services under section 9(3), but due to scarcity of time, also these services are not generally in all generally applicable in all business transactions. These are specific transactions. So I'll share the PPT, you can go through it later. Now the last one I'll discuss with you and then we can sum up, is the reverse charge on e-commerce operator. Right? We have discussed section 9(3). Now I'll discuss 9(5), and in 9(4), I'll sum up after 9(4). 9(4) is now not applicable. It was applicable in July 17, and it was applicable till 31st October 2018 only. Right? Now, what is the applicability of reverse charge on e-commerce transactions? So there can be three scenarios, right? So Ola, Oyo, Urban Clap, right? So what is written in the first entry? Supplier of service, any person. So any person, that is the taxi drivers, right? Description is the radio taxi, transportation of passengers by radio taxi, Ola, Uber. Who is liable to pay tax? E-commerce operator. Because obviously the drivers cannot take GST registration and comply with the GST provisions. So Ola is a big company, they can comply with the provisions. So e-commerce operator will deposit the tax on behalf of the drivers. So the services provided by drivers to the customers, the tax will be deposited by the Ola company. Secondly, Oyo rooms. In Oyo rooms, again the same thing, but in the case of supplier of service, there is a small change. Any person except who is liable for registration under subsection 1 of section 22 that we have discussed earlier. So if it is a big hotel, suppose ITC Moria, it is a big hotel, right? They've already taken GST registration. They have crossed the threshold limit of 20 lakhs. And suppose a person get the hotel room booked from Oyo Rooms portal, then the GST will not be deposited by Oyo Rooms because ITC Moria has already taken GST registration. However, if in the same scenario there is a small hotel who is not registered under GST, then in that scenario, OYO will deposit the GST on behalf of the hotel to the government. Similar case is in the case of Urban Clap Company. They provide housekeeping services, plumbing services, etc. So, like OYO, the same provision is case of supplier of service. So, similar provision in case of Urban Clap Company also, right? So, these are the provisions related to e-commerce operator, right? Now, section 9, subsection 4, it is basically the applicability of GST from purchase of unregistered person, right? But it was applicable in the initial days. Now there is no goods, no services that is specifically covered under this mechanism. Any kind of purchase from unregistered is not covered under GST. The specific is section is 9(3), 9(4), which we have already discussed. 9(3) and 9(5), sorry. Under 9(5), 9(4), there is certainly a one transaction that is related to real estate sector, that requires again a much time. So which says that a promoter or a builder of a company, like who's into construction of commercial properties, so you have to purchase all the goods from registered person only. Your 80% of your purchases should be from registered persons. If you get short from 80%, then you have to deposit the tax, right? So Thank you so much. This is my email ID and this is my contact number. You can ping me on this number. You can WhatsApp me if I'm not able to take any calls, and I'll try to surely attend any kind of query. Also, you can ping me on WhatsApp. I can add you on my broadcast so that you can get the regular updates related to GST. So thank you so much. Thank you for your patient hearing, and thank you organizers for again inviting me. If there are any queries, I can take up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any query, so please quickly post it so that we can take it up.
I guess participants can always ask the questions. We always circulate the resource person's mail
Right, sir.
IDs, so we can take up if there are no queries coming. Mostly are thank you
And
messages.
right, sir. So I believe there are no more queries, and you have been handling the queries side by side also, sir. So I don't think so. There are more queries. So shall we just wind up the session with your permission, sir?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much, C. Aditya Agarwal, sir. I take the privilege to propose the vote of thanks for this session on behalf of Teaching Learning Center, Ramanujan College, University of Delhi, and Indian Accounting Association NCR chapter. So we are truly honored to have you amongst us for this session on reverse charge, which is one of the most important component of GST. You have started with the basics and moving on to the advanced level with the definitions and then discussing case examples along with numericals shows how well structured the presentation come lecture was. Within the limited time period, we believe it was the complete justification the way the concept has been explained and discussed by you, sir. Thank you, sir, for taking all the queries as and when they occurred and solving them with your lucid answers. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, participants, for joining us. And we'll meet next Saturday at 10 o'clock. And all the slides, whenever they'll be received from the resource person, we'll share the slides with you. And we'll share the email IDs of the resource person at the end of the course so that you can contact them directly if needed be. Thank you, Anshika ma'am. Thank you, Anjali ma'am.
Thank you, Charu ma'am. Thank you, and thank you. We meet on Saturday now. Okay, we can. I guess we can end this session now.